You have 48 hours to clear out your things from this hostel, or the school will do it for you.
3 months ago, she had walked into this same hostel with a suitcase, a Bible, a reading timetable already written out for the semester, and a promise to her mother that she would make the family proud. What happens when a disciplined girl with a clear vision lets someone else start writing her story for her? Stay with me till the end, because what Ifeoma discovers about her roommate and about herself will make you think twice about who you allow into your life when you are trying to build something that matters. Ifeoma had grown up in a small compound in Nnewi, the last of 5 children, and the only one her parents believed could break the pattern of struggle that had followed their family for 2 generations. Her father sold spare parts in the market. Her mother sold clothes for neighbors who often paid late or not at all. When Ifeoma gained admission into the university to study accounting, her mother wept openly in the parlor, not from sadness, but from a hope she had carried quietly for 18 years. "You will not disappoint this family," her father told her the morning she left for school, pressing a small envelope of money into her palm. "Whatever you lack, write books, not clothes." Ifeoma nodded and meant it with her whole chest. On her first day at the hostel, she arranged her side of the room with a discipline that surprised even the porter carrying her boxes. Textbooks stacked by course code, a reading schedule above her bed, a small calendar where she had already circled every test date for the semester weeks before lectures had even started. She did not know yet that her roommate would arrive the following evening and rearrange far more than the furniture. Her name was Tega, and she entered the room the way certain people enter every room they will ever walk into, loudly, brightly, already laughing at something on her phone before she had even said hello. "Oh, thank God, you're neat," Tega said, dropping 2 large bags in the middle of the floor. "I was scared I would get a roommate who leaves food under the bed." Ifeoma laughed politely and helped her arrange her things, immediately noticing how different her boxes looked. Where Ifeoma had books, Tega had makeup organizers stacked 3 high. Where Ifeoma had a Bible on her reading table, Tega had a Bluetooth speaker already playing music before her bags were even fully unpacked. "You've started reading already?" Tega asked, peering at Ifeoma's open textbook that first night.
You've started reading already? School has not even started properly. I like to stay ahead. University is not just about books, you know. If you don't enjoy it now, when will you enjoy your life?
For the first 2 weeks, Ifeoma held her ground firmly. When Tega invited her to a welcome party organized by one of the departmental social groups, she declined politely.
Come on, just 1 hour, nobody will even notice you left. I have a test coming up.
She had come to school with a mission, and she intended to protect it. But something about consistent proximity works on a person slowly, the way water works on stone, not through force, but through repetition. Every morning, Tega complimented her fresh hair, her new outfit, the way she seemed to know everybody already. Every evening, she returned with stories of laughter Ifeoma had not been part of. Slowly, a small, uncomfortable feeling began to grow inside Ifeoma's chest, something she did not immediately recognize as loneliness disguised as discipline. If you have ever had a roommate, a coursemate, or a close friend who slowly pulled you away from the life you had planned for yourself, type "I know this story" in the comments right now, because what happened to Ifeoma next happens to more students than anyone likes to admit. The first crack appeared on a Friday evening. In the 4th week, Ifeoma stood in front of the mirror applying lip gloss, already dressed, already smelling of perfume Ifeoma did not own.
Ifeoma, it's just 1 night. You've been reading since the semester started. Even machines need rest.
There was something in the way she said it, not mockery, but a gentle, almost caring persuasion that made refusing feel unreasonable, even unkind to herself. Ifeoma went. She told herself it was just 1 night, that one outing could not possibly undo weeks of discipline. She came back at midnight, her feet aching from unfamiliar heels Tega had lent her, her head slightly heavy from a drink she barely finished, but still felt. She promised herself, lying in the dark, that this was an exception, not a beginning.
But exceptions once permitted rarely stay exceptions. 2 weeks later, she missed her first study group session because Tega convinced her to go watch a movie premiere downtown instead. "Your classmates will still explain everything to you tomorrow," Tega said breezily. "This premiere will not repeat itself." The following week, she skipped a tutorial class entirely to accompany Tega to a friend's birthday brunch, telling herself it was simply one class, easily recoverable. Bit by bit, the calendar above her bed, once dense with circle test dates and reading plans, began to feel less like a guide and more like an accusation she avoided looking at directly. By the 8th week, Ifeoma had stopped attending her early morning lectures altogether, not because she suddenly stopped caring, but because the nights had grown longer and her body simply refused to wake up. She had also started spending money in ways she never used to. A new pair of sneakers, because everyone in Tega's circle had them, contributions toward a weekend trip to a resort 2 hours outside the city, money she withdrew from the small emergency fund her mother had insisted she keep untouched, a hair appointment that cost more than her textbook allowance for the entire month. Each purchase felt small and justifiable on its own. Together, they were quietly emptying a future she had not yet realized she was spending. "Ifeoma, this life you are now living is not the life your parents are sponsoring," her course advisor told her one afternoon, after noticing her absence from 3 consecutive classes. Ifeoma laughed it off outwardly, but inside something twisted uncomfortably, a small, persistent voice she had learned to silence with music, outings, and the comforting noise of Tega's laughter down the hallway. The first real warning came in the middle of the semester, when her mid-semester test scores were posted on the department notice board. Ifeoma stood in front of that board for almost a full minute, certain she was misreading her own matriculation number besides such low figures. Courses she had once been confident about, financial accounting, business statistics, carried scores she had never associated with her name before. A classmate standing beside her muttered, not unkindly, "Ifeoma, are you okay? This is not your usual result." Ifeoma nodded stiffly and walked away quickly, humiliation burning hot behind her eyes. That evening, she confronted Tega gently. "I think I need to focus more," she said. "My results this semester are not good." Tega, scrolling through her phone, barely looked up. "It's just one test, babe. Final exams are what matter. Relax." Ifeoma wanted to believe her. She needed to believe her, because believing otherwise meant admitting how far she had already drifted from the version of herself that once circled test dates weeks in advance. If you are watching this and you recently caught yourself repeating the phrase, "it's just one time," about something you know is pulling you away from your goals, comment the words, "just one time," below, because Ifeoma said those exact words to herself more times than she could later count. The real turning point, the one that would eventually strip away every illusion Tega's friendship had built, arrived without warning 3 weeks before final examinations. Ifeoma had borrowed money from a fellow student, a girl named Blessing, who ran a small lending arrangement among classmates, charging modest but firm interest. She had borrowed to cover a birthday contribution for one of Tega's friends, promising herself she would repay it from her allowance the following month. But that month's allowance had already been spent on a weekend trip she barely remembered enjoying, and the month after carried its own new expenses. The debt, small at first, began to grow the way small debts always do when a person keeps adding to what they have not yet paid off. By the time final exams began, Ifeoma owed Blessing an amount that felt enormous against the modest allowance her parents sent. She sat for her first paper distracted, her mind splitting itself between accounting formulas and the increasingly impatient messages piling up on her phone. She left the examination hall uncertain she had answered even half the questions correctly. Walking back to the hostel, phone buzzing again with another message from Blessing, Ifeoma saw Tega laughing loudly outside our block with a group of new friends Ifeoma barely recognized, planning yet another outing to celebrate finishing exams, despite Ifeoma having 2 papers left to write.
Tega, I need to talk to you. I'm in trouble. I owe Blessing money, and exams are not going well. You'll sort it out. You always sort things out.
Ifeoma stood there long enough to understand something she had refused to see for months. Tega had never actually been walking beside her through any of this. Tega had simply been walking ahead, occasionally glancing back to invite her along, entirely unconcerned with wherever the path eventually led. The final blow arrived 2 weeks after examinations ended, when result sheets were released. Ifeoma's overall grade point average had dropped so severely that she now stood on academic probation, one more poor semester away from outright expulsion. Worse still, Blessing had grown tired of waiting for repayment and had begun mentioning the debt loudly to mutual classmates, embarrassment spreading in whispers exactly the way Ifeoma once watched other people's shame spread in her village back home. The hostel warden, informed of a separate noise complaint involving Tega's frequent late-night guests, issued a joint disciplinary letter to their room. It was this letter and the humiliating meeting that followed with the school's disciplinary committee that finally forced Ifeoma to search desperately for the one person she believed could stand beside her through the mess, the same person who had walked her into most of it. Tega was nowhere to be found. Her side of the room had been quietly cleared out 3 days earlier, while Ifeoma sat in a disciplinary hearing defending her academic future. A note left carelessly on the reading table said only,
She's gone.
no acknowledgement of the debts, the missed classes, or the friendship Ifeoma had allowed to reshape her entire semester. Ifeoma sat on her bed staring at that note for a long time, waiting for anger to rise inside her. Instead, what rose first was a quieter, harder truth. If someone has ever disappeared from your life the moment things became difficult, after being fully present when things were fun, comment disappeared below. Because Ifeoma learned that lesson in the most expensive way a student can learn it. That night, alone in a half-empty room for the first time in months, Ifeoma finally allowed herself to cry without performing composure for anyone. But somewhere in the middle of that crying, a different feeling began to settle beside the grief.
No one poured this life on
Clarity.
me.
She
I
thought
allowed
about
it,
her
small
father's
yes at a
words
time.
The morning she left home, whatever you lack, write books, not clothes. She thought about her mother weeping with hope in the parlor. She thought about the calendar above her bed, still there, still holding test dates she had stopped honoring months ago. And she understood, finally, painfully, that Tega had never forced her hand toward a single outing, a single skipped class, or a single naira spent. Tega had only opened doors. Ifeoma was the one who kept walking through them. The following morning, Ifeoma did something she had not done in weeks. She woke before sunrise, sat at her reading table, and wrote out a plan not for a single test, but for the rest of her academic life. She visited her course advisor and requested an honest conversation about recovering from probation. She approached Blessing directly, apologized sincerely, and proposed a strict monthly repayment plan she committed to in writing. She called her mother, and though the conversation was difficult, she chose honesty over comfortable silence, admitting where she had drifted and why. Her mother, after a long pause on the phone, said only, "Falling is not the tragedy, my daughter. Staying down is." That sentence stayed with Ifeoma longer than any lecture ever had. The following semester tested her resolve in ways the previous one never had. She moved into a new room with a quieter roommate, a final year student named Amaka, who studied law and kept a routine as disciplined as the one Ifeoma had once protected fiercely. She rebuilt her reading schedule from scratch, attended every early morning lecture even when exhaustion tempted her otherwise, and slowly, painfully watched her results begin climbing back toward the standards she once considered simply normal for herself. It was not instant. 2 courses required repeating entirely, a bruise to her pride she carried quietly. But bruise by bruise, semester by semester, Ifeoma rebuilt the version of herself she had nearly lost to someone else's enjoyment. She saw Tega only once more before graduation, in a crowded market days before final year results were released. Tega, now visibly thinner, less bright than Ifeoma remembered, greeted her with the same easy laughter as always, as though 18 months and one abandoned friendship had never happened. "Ifeoma, long time! How is school treating you now?"
Ifeoma studied her for a moment, feeling neither anger nor bitterness, only a strange, settled distance. "School is treating me exactly how I treat it," she said simply, and continued on her way. Ifeoma graduated a full year behind her original plan, but she graduated. Standing in her gown outside the convocation hall, her parents beside her, her mother crying the same tears she had cried the day Ifeoma left home, only heavier this time, richer with relief rather than fear. Ifeoma understood something she would carry into every future decision she ever made. Discipline is not something anyone can protect for you. It is not even something a person builds once and keeps forever. It is a door you must choose to close again and again, every single day, regardless of who is standing outside it, laughing, inviting, waiting. She kept the old reading calendar from that first troubled semester. Dates circled, most of them now crossed out in a different color of ink. A private reminder tucked inside her final project folder. Not as shame, as evidence that a person can drift very far from themselves and still, deliberately, painfully, find their way back. If Ifeoma's story reminded you of a season in your own life where you let someone else's version of enjoyment quietly rewrite your priorities, tell us in the comments how you found your way back. Your story might be exactly what someone else watching this today needs to read today. And if you want to see what happens when discipline is tested even further by betrayal instead of distraction, the next video on your screen tells a story you will not want to miss. Don't scroll past it.